Today's story is about two prisoners who broke out of New York's most secure, highest security prison. These prisoners were so cunning and clever that they entangled a female supervisor in their web of love, and with that supervisor's help they carried out the most shocking jailbreak New York had ever seen. To escape, they used a tunnel that was almost impossible to reach, and the other prisoners and guards in the prison were completely unaware that a jailbreak was about to happen. Anyone who heard about it was left astonished. The story begins at Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. 2,000 inmates were serving sentences in this prison, and among them were these two extraordinary prisoners. The first was named Richard Matt, and the second was named David Sweat. Richard Matt, aged 49, was serving a 25-year sentence for the murder of his boss. On the other hand, David Sweat, just 30 years old, had been sentenced to life imprisonment for killing a police officer. Richard Matt was said to be a very dangerous and ruthless prisoner, because he had not only killed his boss, but had dismembered him with a saw, and for this reason the other prisoners feared and respected him. David Sweat was a very clever inmate who knew how to get things done for himself through others. There was a tailor workshop in the prison where inmates sewed clothes, and it was in this workshop that Richard and David met and became very good friends. The tailor workshop had a supervisor named Joy Stolick Mitchell. It was well known that Mitchell often had affairs with prisoners because she was unhappy with her husband, and that is why David Sweat and Mitchell began spending alone time together in the stockroom. Other prisoners in the jail knew very well what was going on between David Sweat and Mitchell, and gradually the news of their affair spread throughout the prison. Richard and David were well aware that merely behaving well would not make their life inside prison easy, so they wanted to befriend some people in the prison authority. To further this plan, David began to get closer to Mitchell, who very easily fell for him. Meanwhile, Richard used his painting talent to impress Officer Eugene Palmer. Because Richard was a very good painter, he often made and gifted nice paintings to Officer Palmer, and this led to a very good friendship between Palmer and him. For this reason, despite being a dangerous prisoner, Richard was allowed to work in the tailor workshop. Both of them were also placed in the honor block, where they were given a personal TV in their cell, allowed to wear civilian clothes, and granted occasional work leave. The news of David and Mitchell's affair had by then spread throughout the prison, so the other inmates from the tailor workshop reported this to the prison authorities. Consequently, David Sweat was removed from the tailor workshop and from his honor block cell. Now David was separated from his girlfriend and had been moved from a comfortable cell to a regular cell where no facilities were available. After David was removed from the tailor workshop, Richard thought he could begin an affair with Mitchell, but since he did not want to betray David, he asked David for permission to get closer to Mitchell. After David gave his permission, Richard began to approach Mitchell. Meanwhile, Mitchell felt very lonely after David's removal, and to fill that void she grew very close to Richard, and their affair began. After starting his affair with Richard, Mitchell began to love him even more than David, and she gifted Richard a pair of reading glasses and helped him meet her daughter. Seeing Mitchell in love with him, Richard told her to bring him a pair of gloves, because his hands often got injured while working, and in return he would paint a picture of her dog for her. This was the beginning of the jailbreak plan that shook all of New York. Now Mitchell frequently smuggled various items into the prison for Richard, including spices, coffee, and playing cards, essentially contraband items. Seeing this, Richard's friend David got the idea of escaping from prison, and he told Richard that if Mitchell could smuggle contraband like those items, why not have her smuggle things that could help them escape from prison? Hearing David, Richard replied that Mitchell was madly in love with him, and that she would bring them whatever they needed into the prison. David's plan was to use a screwdriver to break the cell locks, and then scale the prison wall in the yard with the help of rope. For this job they needed a screwdriver and some putty. Richard told Mitchell that he needed those two things for use in his painting, and Mitchell very easily brought these items into the prison for him. After getting the screwdriver and putty, David began to feel that the plan of scaling the wall was quite risky, because the prison wall was very high and they could be caught while climbing. He then thought, instead of climbing over the wall, why not escape from beneath the wall? He decided that they would go through the sewer lines to escape the prison. To carry out this plan, he told Richard that he would cut the small steel door behind his bed and enter the sewer line. Then the two would escape from there. The sewer line ran behind Richard's cell, and for both of them to escape together, it was very important that their cells be next to each other. But because David had been removed from the honor block cell and put in a regular cell, their cells were apart. So Richard took advantage of his friendship with Officer Palmer, and asked if Palmer could get David shifted back to an honor block cell. because Officer Palmer had 27 years of service in that prison and had influence there. So Palmer managed to get David returned to the honor block. Now David and Richard's cells were right next to each other. Their cell numbers were 622 and 623. During this period, Mitchell had no idea that Richard and David were planning an escape, and she kept smuggling items into the prison for them. One day, at lunch, David told Richard that they would need as many saw blades as possible. Just 2 hours after this conversation, Mitchell went to Walmart to buy those blades. Mitchell realized that she was being asked for items for a reason, and so she used cash to buy items from every place, so that she would leave no trace. Mitchell bought these blades in USD and hid them behind the tailor workshop where Richard worked. After finishing his work, Richard found the saw blades and gave some to David while keeping some for himself. They wrapped the blades with cloth and tied them with rubber bands, so they could be used as makeshift handles. Then they slowly began to cut the small 16-inch steel door behind the bed. They would move the bed and little by little each day, saw into that door and then put the bed back so that the steel door remained hidden, and no one suspected anything. To prevent noise while sliding the bed, they stuck cello tapes to the bed's legs, and any remaining sound was drowned out by the prisoners shouting and screaming while playing dominoes. Because Richard had a strong habit of drinking alcohol, Officer Palmer often brought him alcohol inside the cell. And one day, when David was cutting the steel door in his cell, the officer in the adjacent cell, Officer Palmer, arrived with alcohol for Richard. Seeing Officer Palmer, Richard started talking loudly with him, which gave David the signal that a guard was standing outside his cell. David quickly hid the saw and covered the steel door with the bed. In this way, because of their cleverness and smartness, their escape plan was saved from being ruined that day. Since Richard was much older than David and was turning 50, it took him a whole month to make a hole of 17 by 12 inches, while David managed to make an 18 by 18-inch hole in just 3 weeks. Both of them had also stolen 2 pillows each and 1 prisoner uniform each. They dressed the pillows in prisoner uniforms to make them look like dummies lying on the bed, so that it appeared as if a prisoner was sleeping there. Now David often went through that hole into the sewer lines to search for an escape route. To cover the hole, he hung a painting over it, and he placed the dummy on the bed in such a way that the guard thought David was sleeping. Before morning, David would always return to his cell. Inside the sewer line, David saw a whole web of pipelines. Then he noticed cigarette butts, styrofoam cups, and paper trash lying there. Moving towards that trash, he realized that this path went from B block to C block, but a steel pipe had blocked it. Although the pipe was very thick and difficult to cut, David did not give up. Late at night, after inmates and guards fell asleep, he entered the sewer line and started cutting the pipe. By the next night, he had managed to cut the pipe in the middle. But on the other side, the pipe was sealed with a thick cement wall. Now David realized this was not going to be easy and would take a lot of time. He spent many nights only searching for pipes that were sealed with cement walls. He searched every pipe in C block, D block, and E block. This process tired David a lot, and he lost nearly 30 pounds of weight. David began to think that if he broke the cement wall from inside the pipe, he might find a way out. So he started removing 3 to 4 bricks daily from those walls. During this time, David's luck favored him, and he found a contractor's toolbox in E block. Inside the toolbox, there was a hammer, which made David's work much easier. Slowly, with the help of this hammer, David started breaking the cement wall. Within just 2 weeks, he succeeded in making a hole in that wall. But a big obstacle was waiting for him. Behind this wall was another wall, 7 feet thick, which was impossible to break without machines. Seeing this, David's courage began to fade, and he felt that they might never escape. David told Richard about this, and the two decided to break the wall together. They kept trying continuously with the hammer, but breaking a 7-foot thick concrete wall without machines was impossible. Now David and Richard needed a plan B. During this time, David noticed a steam pipe. Because this pipe was covered with a thick steel sheet, neither their saws nor blades worked on it. Then the two of them found another contractor's toolbox. Contractors often left their toolboxes behind during work so they could continue the next day. This time, the toolbox they found contained a powerful drilling machine, hammers, battery lights, and most of the tools needed for digging. Now they needed some more tools to continue their work. So Richard asked Mitchell to bring chisels, steel punches, and a drill machine. Since such items in a prisoner's hands were a very big risk, and Mitchell could be caught at the metal detectors while bringing them in, she found a unique and shocking way to smuggle them into the prison. This time, Mitchell hid all the tools inside large chunks of meat. At the prison gate, she said she was carrying frozen meat to make hamburgers for the inmates. At that moment, Officer Palmer also arrived, who knew Mitchell very well. Seeing the frozen meat, Palmer had no doubts about Mitchell, so he allowed her to pass without checking the meat through the metal detector. Since Mitchell was taking all kinds of risks for Richard and showing loyalty, Richard decided to include her in their escape plan. Now Richard told Mitchell that he and David were going to escape from prison, and that she should go with them. Mitchell had by now fallen deeply in love with Richard and wanted to get rid of her husband, so she agreed to escape with him. Now Mitchell had joined David and Richard in their plan. The three of them began planning the jailbreak together. It was decided that when David and Richard broke out of the prison, Mitchell would wait outside in a car for them, and also arrange food and money. Their plan was to escape from there and go to Mexico. Since Mitchell was very afraid of her husband and knew that after she escaped, he would come looking for her, she told David and Richard that on the night they escaped, they should also kill her husband. Hearing Mitchell, Richard felt that this was too risky, and if they committed a murder after escaping, they could be caught. So he told Mitchell that her husband could be killed with poison instead. Then he stole poison from the prison food store and gave it to Mitchell. Meanwhile, David was constantly working on cutting that steam pipe. Because the pipe was extremely hot and there was no ventilation, David's condition became very bad. He realized that without a ventilation system, he could not continue the work. To arrange ventilation, David got a fan and a plastic bag. He tied the plastic bag to the mouth of the fan and left the other end outside the pipe. Now David ran the fan inside the pipe, and the fan pushed the suffocating air out through the plastic bag. Because of this, David was now able to work longer hours cutting the steam pipe. After just a few nights of effort, David succeeded in cutting the pipe. David succeeds and makes a hole big enough that he can easily go inside and come out. Through this hole he enters the tunnel, which ran beneath the prison and connected to other tunnels. Now David starts crawling forward inside that tunnel, and then his eyes fall on a tunnel that was like a slope and was going upward. After moving forward for some time in that tunnel, David reaches a little higher and sees that the tunnel was closed with an iron lid. As soon as David lifts that lid, a shine comes into his eyes because it was not just a lid, but a manhole that opened onto the road outside the prison. Seeing this, David's happiness knew no bounds, and if he wanted he could have escaped alone, leaving Richard and Mitchell behind. But he does not do that, and goes back to his cell. In the prison he gives this news to Richard and tells him that now both of them can escape together from this prison. Before escaping from the prison, Richard meets Mitchell for the last time and tells her to wait for them in her car at the decided place. And finally the night arrives when they were about to escape. Before escaping, Richard gives his TV to a fellow prisoner, saying that he no longer needs it. At the same time, David packs all the necessary items like clothes, shoes, packets of peanuts, and pepperoni into his guitar case. Now both of them were fully ready to escape from the prison. At midnight, both of them enter the sewer system through the hole they had made in their cell, and crawl toward the steam pipe. They were just moving forward through the steam pipe when Richard's foot gets stuck in it. Seeing this, David pulls his foot out, and then both of them crawl toward the upward tunnel and reach the manhole. David first lifts the manhole slightly to check if anyone was around, and when he sees no one, both of them remove the manhole and come out. In just 20 minutes, both had escaped from the prison. After coming out, both of them wait there for Mitchell for some time, but she does not arrive with the car. Although both had come out of the manhole, they were completely unaware that this manhole opened into the backyard of a civilian's house. Just as they start walking from there, they see a car approaching them. The man sitting in the car, when he sees Richard and David, becomes very surprised and stops his car to ask what they were doing in his garden. In reply, David tells him that they had lost their way and mistakenly came there, and then both leave from there. Now both start worrying about why Mitchell had not arrived yet, because they were waiting for her very impatiently. David begins to think that maybe Mitchell had betrayed them, but both were completely unaware that Mitchell could not gather the courage to poison her husband. Because of this, she suffered a panic attack. This panic attack was so serious that Mitchell had to be admitted to the hospital. Now David and Richard could not wait any longer, so both escaped on foot. The next morning in the prison, the guards started banging sticks on the rods of the prisoners' cells to wake them up. Even after banging several times and calling David and Richard, when both did not wake up, the guards opened their cell and went inside. After entering, what they saw shocked them. The guards saw that on both of their beds, pillows had been placed, dressed in prisoner uniforms, and covered with sheets to make it look like they were sleeping there. This news spread throughout the prison like fire, and without delay the police started their investigation. During the investigation, when they found out about the tunnel, police began questioning the jailer and other prisoners. They came to know that Michelle, the supervisor of the tailor workshop, often spent time with both prisoners. At the same time, to catch Richard and David, police launched an organized search camp in which U.S. Marshals, FBI, Border Patrol and Rangers were also involved. Police also announced a reward of $10,000 USD for anyone giving information about these two prisoners. In this whole matter, only Michelle was completely under police suspicion. So police took Michelle into custody and started interrogating her. On the first day of investigation, she kept denying her involvement in this jailbreak. But as evidence against her kept piling up, she broke down and realized that lying would no longer help. 2 days later, she confessed her crime and told police that she had smuggled a lot of items inside the prison for Richard and David, which helped them escape. She also told that she was supposed to escape with them too, but could not. Now 10 days had passed since David and Richard had escaped from the prison. Both of them went and hid inside a cabin in the forest. After spending 10 days in this cabin, they began to feel that if they stayed in one place for too long, they could be caught. So they decided to keep changing their hideouts. But since Richard was drinking a lot of alcohol, he was often drunk, and because of this, David had to face many problems while moving from one place to another. When David tried to explain to Richard that he should quit drinking, Richard threatened him with a knife, saying he would kill him. David now understood very well that if he had to keep moving from place to place, he would soon have to leave Richard behind. Now, even after leaving the cabin, 10 more days had passed, and Richard began to feel that he could no longer run on his feet. So he decided to steal a car at gunpoint. David did not like this idea at all because he knew very well that in a drunken state, Richard could do anything to the car owner, and because of this, they could get caught. At this time, David left Richard and went away. The next day, when Richard tried to rob a car, he was so drunk that he could not even stand properly. Taking advantage of this, the car owner pushed Richard away and escaped with his car. After escaping, he informed the police, after which patrol agents reached that spot. Both officers saw that Richard was standing there holding a gun and asked him to surrender. But since his blood alcohol level was so high, he could not understand anything, and instead of surrendering, he began to move toward the officer. Then suddenly, the sound of a gunshot echoed, and silence spread all around. Richard Matt was killed by police bullets, and he died on the spot. Meanwhile, David decided to leave the US and escape to Canada. After continuously running for 2 days, when he reached near the US-Canada border, a police officer spotted him. The officer was only a short distance away from David. Seeing this, David started running toward the border. He did not want to lose this chance to cross the border at any cost, and thought that he was far enough from the officer that the bullet would not hit him. But this officer was a firearms instructor, and because of that, his aim was very accurate. First, the officer asked David to surrender, but when David did not, the officer fired at him from a distance. David fell to the ground, but since the bullet hit his shoulder, the officer managed to capture him alive. This time, David was sent to another prison, where he was sentenced to solitary confinement. Although he applied to be shifted with the rest of the prisoners, his application was rejected. And David is still serving his sentence in that prison today. This was the story of that astonishing jailbreak in which 2 prisoners, through their cleverness, intelligence, and determination, carried out New York's most shocking prison escape, from a place where escape was considered almost impossible. But because of their foolishness, one prisoner was killed, and the other was caught. How did you like this story? Write in the comment section. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next